This is the Matt Mosley Show.
It is the Matt Mosley Show on the E-Radio Network, and pleased to have Mike Doocy join us. You know him as the anchor from Fox 4. Free for All is the show he does every evening, and for years he's been a staple of the Dallas-Fort Worth market, and is kind enough to have me on fairly often. And Mike, I appreciate you doing this. And boy, our growing audience, we may add a fourth state here soon. I think a lot of folks, especially kind of toward Texas border, pick up Fox 4, and they're familiar with your longtime Cowboys presence and everything. But appreciative of you doing this. Excited to have you on.
Matt, it's great to be on. Congratulations on the ever-growing audience that you do have. It doesn't surprise me a bit, you know, how much I admire your talents, and we always love having you on our show. And, yeah, we're weeknights at 10:30 on Fox 4, Sundays at 10, just to keep it confusing for the viewers. We switch it up there a little bit. But really the only DFW expanded sports show every night, and heaven knows we got a lot of things we can fill it with right now.
Yeah, that is true, and man, it is. There's a lot going on, and I do think that Mike, you got the golden ticket, and Nico. I don't know if Nico did those personally or if it was Mavs PR, but only a handful of people got invited to the roundtable the other day. Now, you had some previously scheduled event that you were unable to attend, so you sent. One of your colleagues to represent you at the round table. I understand things got a little contentious in the room there. I would think Sam Gannon was as kind as she is, though she probably, came strong, was maybe not part of the battle that took place in there. But, Mike, when you first received notice, I mean, this was within like 24 hours, and were the parameters of this Nico Harrison roundtable, was it right there in the invitation? We don't want cameras. We don't want recording devices. Were they up front with that, or was that? Did you kind of learn about that as you got closer to the actual interview taking place?
No, that was stipulated from the very beginning, and it just seemed so odd. I just couldn't. I couldn't understand the rationale behind having the media gathering, number one, when you're doing it, and not taking any topics off the table. I mean, that was, and from a journalistic standpoint, Matt, and you saw some of this on Twitter. I saw people say, "Oh, the station should have gotten together and refused to do this because we couldn't have cameras or recording." Well, now to me, it's not like they said, look, we're going to meet, but we're not going to talk about the trade. And then you've got a decision to make. It's terribly inconvenient for electronic media to not be able to use video or audio. I'll grant you that. But we just thought it was better to be in the room than not be in the room if given the opportunity. So, but it was another terrible look from the franchise. And I don't know where Nico's getting his advice in terms of setting something up like this. And somebody reported, I think today or last night, that it wasn't really Nico's idea. It was Dumont's idea. What a mess. I mean, they managed to make a terrible situation even worse for a day there. But yeah, it was, from the people I talked to, including Sam from our staff, it was just kind of an odd vibe in the room.
Yeah, and I used you as an example the other day. You'll like this, as someone, because somebody was making the point you were saying. They shouldn't have gone. The media shouldn't have gone. And I had to try to explain, okay, yeah, that's fine if you want to have that opinion, but somebody's going to go to that thing. You're not going to get everybody to agree not to. And the people you serve, you're a liaison for all the viewers. They want, if this guy's going to say something interesting or otherwise, they want to hear it. So you're going to get all the media together, which you can't get the media to agree. It's like getting Baptists to agree on something. And you're going to get everybody to agree to not show up. That's not feasible, But again, I understand not everybody understands the inner workings of the media. And I try not to have that attitude, like everybody should understand that. But the news value outweighed any sort of nuisance that they caused. But again, it's almost like they want to be kicked. It's almost like, and I saw the same thing you did. I'm trying to think who was throwing that out. It was kind of like a national type person I felt like was saying it was not Nico's idea. To me, this thing went extremely poorly, and Nico needed somebody to come out and go, well, it really wasn't my idea. This was like, Rick Welch. Think about that guy, by the way, Mike, and I'm sure you've crossed paths with him. I have heard about him. He's the new Mavs CEO. He's at the end of his career. He's like, 72 years old, which, is the new, 52. And he's just trying to kind of, wind things down, and he steps in this. And I think he was hoping to talk about a new arena or something the other day. And I've heard comments from him where he's just like, I was overwhelmed a little bit by the backlash. And it just tells you how clueless this group is, and even now, of course, Nico has to double down and go defense wins championships, and he can't afford to weeks after this thing or a couple of months after to go, yeah, I screwed it up, I should have never done that. He can't. I get that he can't say that, but boy, they just don't. They just have completely alienated this fan base, and Mike, it's like. It is funny because we beat up Jerry like crazy, yet obviously people are never going to stop following the Cowboys. And yet it was like this guy went sprinting past Jerry. And you and I have been covering all this stuff forever, and we've been around Jerry forever. And I've never seen any local group alienate fans to this point. And we really don't have anything to compare it to. And I started all this, by the way, Mike, of saying – I brought you up because one time Jerry Jones said right before an interview with you, I'm not going to talk about this thing, which was what kind of everybody was wanting to ask him about. And you made I thought it was a gutsy decision. You made the decision on the fly to not do the interview. And I always admired you for that. And I know, you didn't want any credit or whatever for it. But for some reason that came back to mind. It was like you were given some stipulations. You chose not to engage. So it was a little bit similar. But anyway, I just wanted you to know you popped back into my head the other day when all this came up.
It's funny you'd mention that because I thought about it a little bit too. And I said that night on the air, and it was at training camp in Oxnard, 5 years ago. And I said on the air that night, I'm not sure that it was the right decision because my philosophy usually is some information is better than none at all. But it was just, I think it was the anthem issue or something at the time that's all anybody wanted to talk about. And it was just the timing. 30 seconds before the interview was scheduled to start, the PR guy said, oh, by the way, he's not talking about this. So it went in that direction. And as I said earlier, if the Mavs stipulations had included some sort of limitations on what could be asked, then I think it's a more difficult decision to make. This just had to do with the formatics in terms of not being able to use cameras or recorders, and I don't like that as a TV person. But on the other hand, writers get stuff all off the record all the time, stuff that's not on camera, not recorded on audio recorders, and we talk about that after the fact. So I sort of would equate it to that. But yeah, just back briefly to the Welts thing too. I think that's an interesting sidebar here, and I don't know him. I guess crossed paths a time or two with him, but yeah, he could not have imagined what he'd gotten into here. And talk about tone deaf. I can't remember which trade he compared this to, some trade Golden State had made a few years ago, and he was there. I'm like, are you kidding me? You have any idea, again, how tone deaf that is? And I'm sure that Nico had gotten a lot of pressure. And I saw Nico at the Luka game last week. And, obviously I hadn't talked to him since any of this had started. Very few people had. And I just briefly said hello. I said, we'd love to talk to you sometime. Think you need to get out there and say something. And we just went on our separate ways. But this was not the way to do it. That's for sure.
Yeah, Mike, the trade you alluded to that Welch brought up because he was part of the Warriors organization was a great parallel, great comparison. It was Monte Ellis for Andrew Bogut. All right, so I think that really that really sums up exactly Luka for Anthony Davis. By the way, have you caught the play-in fever? I mean, the Mavs get a big win last night. Clay does his thing. Klay Thompson hit a bunch of threes, and now tonight they play, I guess, for the right to be in the playoffs. It was very strange. TNT or ESPN or whoever was promoting the play-in, they were using Rob Lowe to do it. And I thought that's an odd – I mean, I like Rob Lowe, and he's a funny guy, but I don't know what he has to do with the NBA or the play-in or anything like that.
Coincidentally, as I sit here in my office, I see my latest copy of AARP magazine, and Rob Lowe is on the cover. I kid you not. It's absolutely true. But I think we're all cynical about the Mavs right now for good reason and critical. I understand that, but I do give that group of guys credit for going out there and playing really well last night. And Anthony Davis showing a little something, and Clay remembering that he knows how to shoot 3-pointers and all that stuff. But my God, if they win another game and have to play Oklahoma City, that could be pretty ugly, that's for sure. But it was interesting on the national telecast to hear the people, show Nico repeatedly and talk about the gutsy move he made in making that trade, and I could just hear the collective groans from across North Texas. Gutsy's one way to put it, right?
Yeah, I thought the Luka game was handled okay by the National. I mean, I know you were there, and I had the chance to be there. I had to try to race down there after the radio, but I came back and I watched the broadcast, and it was just interesting because Mike Breen knew sort of the assignment. He even said, hey, so far you have to call this trade a disaster. And Doris was saying, he felt, he obviously feels stabbed in the back, and Richard Jefferson was on there. And so I thought they handled it appropriately. I understand there's been some back and forth on our local broadcast with Followell, and maybe some people called him out. And by the way, Mike Doocy with us on the Matt Mosley Show on the E-Radio Network. And, Mike, you also do, and even early in your career, I think you'd had some radio experience, but you're also on the ticket. And I got to say, again, I got some great friends over there, but I love it when you're on. You're great at it. You're very natural. And quite honestly, you just kind of have a different approach, and it just works so well because we know kind of what they're trying to do. You don't try not to be yourself, and for some reason, anyway, you're really good at it. So I just wanted to note you also have some radio in your background, and that really, with this audience, Mike, that gives you so much more credibility.
Well, that was my first broadcast love, that's for sure. Radio, it was all radio for me until, I don't know, I was probably almost 30 years old before I went over to the dark side of television. But those ticket boys are unique, and I appreciate being able to hop on with them once in a while. It's fun.
Yeah, I had my chance at about that age to make crazy of me not to do it, but TXCN was going to hand that show over to me over there at Channel 8 because I was at the Dallas Morning News. I was going to be, hey, Mosley, come take this thing over. You remember Bob Sturm did it a little bit at some point.
You bet.
And I just thought, how in the world do I keep writing? And, I was just so into the journalism part of it. How could I possibly do this job or do both jobs well? And I turned it down, and I was probably 29 or 30, and that may have been a horrific decision. But, Mike, here's the thing. You had the looks on your side in a big way, and so radio, you were always going to have to transition, especially with the hair and everything. You were going to have to do that. Now, okay, so we got play-in tonight. So much going on in the Metroplex this time of year. Now, Mike, and I don't know why we're going to transition to the draft here quickly, but the Masters the other day, and you're like a lot of, you covered all this over the years. You go out and cover the Nelson, the Colonial, but man, you've seen reactions. You've seen poignant, emotional moments. You've shared some of them with people during some of your interviews, but that Rory reaction the other day, and I thought that's a good decision by CBS to just kind of let all that happen, not try to talk over any of that. I think that's always a good decision when TV folks do that. Man, I didn't even know the Luka thing recently was just about killed me. I mean, it was to watch that was extremely emotional, and I think it reminded us of how much he did want to be here, and it even made people angrier at Nico. But to watch Rory McIlroy, and we got a bunch of golfers in our audience, but that was, Mike, that was really something, because it was somebody letting us all see like how painful that drought of majors. Again, he's been great over the last 11 years, but he hadn't won a major. I almost don't have anything to compare that to, like what we witnessed in that in the aftermath of Rory winning the green jacket.
I thought what was interesting about Rory was the fact that he admitted how difficult it was, and talked about how it was basically torture to have to come back to Augusta every year and not win the thing, and knowing that career Grand Slam is still out there. And bigger picture, Matt, you're right about the incredible just emotion that can be felt as a result of sporting events. And I know, and I said this the night of the Luka thing, I know it's not real life, so to speak. And I know the term that I'm about to use, it shouldn't probably be applied to sports, but within the framework of sports, the Luka night, it felt tragic. It just felt there was such sadness in that arena. The video occurred early and people went crazy, and every time he touched the ball early, people went crazy. And late, when he left the game, the ovation was thunderous. But in between, I think there was just kind of a sadness that set in there, just kind of a cast a pall over the arena. And, the opposite happened with Rory McIlroy, just the incredible joy that was felt. And, I was a little worried about him for a minute there after he actually won the thing. As he's going down to his knees, I'm like, is he going to pass out here? He is really overwhelmed. And I think Jim Nantz probably had to be bound and gagged in the booth just to be able to lay out there for a minute and not He's the best, though, man. He is the absolute best. Nantz is on that Sunday at that event, and he's bringing the stories up about Rory's parents and how difficult it was back in the day in Northern Ireland, and hitting the golf balls into mom's washing machine on Irish TV at age 8, and all that stuff was coming up. But it's always one of my favorite days anyway. That like I said, Sunday at the Masters, but for Rory to come through like that, it was really special. It was fun.
Boy, Nantz emptied the clip, and then all of a sudden Rory had to go in a playoff, and it was like he'd already said everything. It's like, what's Nantz have left?
Nantz is like, in case I hadn't mentioned it earlier, just recall things.
You got to get those. You got to get the wife's name right. You got to get all that, and then if you recall, like there was a time when. Fox had it for a little bit. We won't get into that, but Joe was calling it, and Joe, I think, got Koepka's, whoever he was dating at the time. He may have gone back and had the wrong girlfriend's name or something. That was kind of interesting. Nantz came after me one time, believe it or not, years ago. I was covering the Nelson, and I was being sarcastic about things as usual, and I'd written it, and of course all those guys still read the newspaper, which was great at the time, and Parcells was up there with him, and I had made some comment like kind of criticizing Nantz. I was young, Deuce, and I probably wasn't really thinking through it. And Nantz, I still could hear him. He said, I don't remember the name of the writer, but he said something, and he addressed it on the air, whatever I had written in the morning news. Yes. But years later, to show how good of a guy he is, like Cowlishaw goes up to him and says, hey, your nemesis is still, I work with your nemesis. And just right there, Nantz recorded 30 seconds like going at me. Just like, Matt, I can't believe we've had this, beef for all these years. He just played it up beautifully. So anyway, he is. And I
don't know Jim Nantz, but I really admire him and always have. And I think I don't think he's lost anything, through the years. I think the guy's just so incredibly well prepared. And we all have our styles, and some people like the styles and some don't. But it just screams big event when he's doing it, I think. But the dynamic on Sunday was pretty challenging at times.
I just hope that someday you'll say something similar to what he just did about his retirement. He said, I think I'm going to go out on the 100th year or whatever the thing is, and maybe it's a Masters. He's like 2036. He's already targeted 11 years from now. I think, Deuce, you should just say something like for like 15 years from now. You should go ahead and target your retirement date. I don't know. I'm sure Fox will be fine with that.
When the Cowboys finally win a Super Bowl, that'll be it. Yeah.
Last thing, speaking of them, and I knew this would go fast because I love visiting with you, but and Mike Doocy, the legendary anchor, Fox 4 in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Cowboys at number 12. I know you've mocked this thing up from every possible way. We did hear the other day, I had Drew Pearson on, and boy, Matthew Golden from UT is the guy he really, really wants. But as you've kind of looked at this thing, Mel Kiper at one point had running back there. This guy from Arizona is a pretty good player, great receiver, I should add. But so there are going to be some different options there at 12. I don't think Genty will fall. I don't know who the best Iowa player available is at that point. I'm sure probably an edge rusher or some huge tight end or something. But who do you like? Are you, in those first couple of rounds, is there anybody you're kind of thinking, hey, are you excited about the Cowboys maybe taking a wide receiver? Where are you on the Cowboys draft?
Funny that you would mention my Hawkeyes, Matt, because they do have a running back named Caleb Johnson. And I think maybe he'll be a second rounder, and I have actually heard him connected to the Cowboys. So keep an eye on that if they go running back fairly early on. I guess wide receiver is what I keep hearing, and it's the names that you're mentioning: the Arizona kid, Golden from Texas. I see the tight end from Penn State if he's still there, and to me that would be a bit of an odd pick to go tight end. I mean, Cowboys, it's generic to say it, but they have so many needs that I really do think it's a year where if you just want to go with the player who you feel is the best at 12, just best overall player, go with them almost regardless of position. You could use help on the defensive line. You could use help in the secondary at corner as well. So I'm not sure exactly where they'll go, but looking at the mocks and the people who know a lot more about it than I do, wide receiver seems to be the leader in terms of the possible position they'll go with.
Mike, I want you to have a great rest of the week. It is, I want to remind you, it is Easter weekend, and so hope to see you at a church there in the Metroplex. And but I hope the family and boy, those shots of your grandchild, that is really, really special, and I know you're very excited about that. We're seeing some of that show up on Facebook, but you should be very proud, and that's got to be a very, very fun stage of life. And you still look like a young grandfather. I don't know if you were like Steve Martin and you were struggling to embrace being a grandfather. What are you called, by the way? What have you asked to be called?
That's what everybody asks, and it's just Grandpa so far. But he's 6 months old, so he's not really calling me anything yet. He's just kind of spitting up, But he's here right now, in fact. So we're hanging out. Matt, congratulations on your show's expansion. We look forward to having you on TV soon. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Yep. We'll see if we can have you back on Monday. Thanks, Mike.
All right.
Okay. There it goes.
Bye.
Mike Doocy on the Matt Mosley Show, EU Radio Network, and Mike's a great friend and has had me on for years, and we just have a lot of fun together, and I just thought he'd be a great guy to have, especially as we're rolling out our brand new show. Wonderful guy to have there. All right, let's get you ready. We've got big-time baseball going on, and this Rangers pitching. I want to react a little bit to that. Is this sustainable, and what are we seeing? We saw another good performance last night. Let's talk about it next.
More Matt Mosley coming up.